Whew, what a party.
But look at the walls, John. So many stains.
Well, yeah, but...
You know what this means.
Val,
Time to repaint.
Val.
What, John?
We used Valspar Reserve, remember?
Mm-hmm.
It's super stain resistant and scrubbable. See? The walls are perfect.
Oh, yeah.
But if you still want to repaint...
Yay!
Valspar Reserve Paint and Primer with Hydrochroma technology. Now the colors you love stay the colors you love. Exclusively at Lowe's.
Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to another episode of the Grueling Truth Tuesday Night Boxing Show. I'm your host, as always, Mike Goodpaster, and I would like to welcome in my co-host, Joe Rodriguez.
Hey, Mike, great to be here.
We've got a great show tonight. I know the man that's here was me and Joe, one of our favorite fighters. Member of the International Boxing Hall of Fame, was a WBC welterweight champion of the world from 1976 to 1979. Help me welcome to the Grueling Truth boxing legend Carlos Palomino.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's great being with you guys.
Hey, it's great having you. We'll just start from the beginning. Where were you born and raised? I think I read that you were born in Mexico, moved to the United States when you were 8. Just tell us what it was like growing up.
Well, we actually moved to the United States when I was 10 years old in 1960, and moved into Santa Ana, little barrio in Santa Ana, Orange County. Stayed there for about a year and a half till my dad was settled and had a job and got our own place in the city of Westminster. So that's where I grew up. We went to Warner Junior High School in Westminster, and to Westminster High School. So it was, it wasn't easy because I'm one of 12 kids, and my father expected us, to work from day one. So didn't have much of a social life as a kid in Warner High School or high school, because I worked part-time right after high school, and I worked on the weekends in a restaurant as a dishwasher, so all 4 years of high school. So it wasn't easy, but you had some friends that you hung out around on the weekends. Sigler Park and Westminster, we played, pick up football, pick up softball games, pick up basketball, just a normal teenage kind of years. And hanging out with friends. Yeah, that got me thinking of, you mentioned that you played other sports. So as you were playing other sports, what about boxing caught your attention, and around what age did you start getting serious?
Oh, no,
I started boxing at the age of 21. When I got drafted. When I got drafted, I had to go into the Army. But my father was a huge boxing fan, and he always had boxing gloves around the house. And when there was any disputes, with me, older brother, younger brothers, we had to settle them with the boxing gloves. And he wasn't a fighter, but he loved watching boxing, and we grew up watching it when we had a TV. And there was always gloves around the house. So I said, he would sometimes on the weekends he'd call over the neighborhood kids, and in Mexico, when we lived in Mexico, especially more of that. We'd have Robin tournaments in the backyard, and the winner would get a soda, So, but once we came to the United States, I started playing baseball. That was my love. I wanted to play baseball more than anything. But my dad didn't let me play high school ball because I needed to work. So when I got drafted, I ended up joining a boxing gym just to get in shape for basic training. And I found out that you could box in the Army. One of the coaches there told me you could box in the Army, and so he started working with me. I had maybe 2 months of training, of actual boxing training with this coach who became my trainer for my whole career, Noe Cruz. Then I went and did my basic training at Fort Ord, and after that, they sent me to Fort Hood in Texas, and I got there just in time for the Fort Hood Boxing Championships, and I entered that tournament and I won it. Then they sent me to the 4th U.S. Army Championships, and I won that. And then they sent me to the All Army tournament, and I won that. So as soon as I won the All Army Championships, I just stayed with the Army boxing team for my duration of my time in the Army.
The one thing I remember is, I'm not old enough to remember I was like 4 or 5 years old when you were an amateur, but just like you, I used to sit around, watch the boxing with my dad. We'd put the gloves on, we'd go downstairs, and, we'd spar and stuff. But I remember him telling me, I think it was before the second Armando Muniz fight, which was on ABC, him telling me, I'm from Indiana, like I said, he saw an amateur fight between you and Norman Goines.
Oh, my God. Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding you.
Was he at the fight? Was he at the fight?
He was at the fight. It was in Indianapolis, I believe, wasn't it?
No, that was in the Pan American Trials, 1971 Pan Am Trials in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Yeah.
My dad actually was in the military and had a friend, his best friend, my middle name is Alan, which I don't like to tell people because I don't like the name that much. But he actually lived in North Carolina, and I know he saw the fight, and I think he said that Goines was from Indiana, and he said it was one of the best amateur fights he ever saw.
Oh, my God. It was amazing because Norman Goines was just a phenomenal puncher. The fight was, as an amateur, I fought at 139. It was a light welterweight. So he was just an amazing puncher at that weight, and he had me down 3 times in that fight. Once every round, first, second, third round, I got dropped, but I kept getting up and I kept winning the rounds on punches. As an amateur, because if that had been a pro fight, it might have been stopped in the second round. But I kept getting up and just scoring more points, so I ended up winning the fight.
You had a
What's that?
Real quick, Joe, I just wanted to throw one more thing in, because I'm pretty sure when you won the amateurs, didn't you beat Sugar Ray Seals, who went on to fight the 72 Olympics?
Yes, I did in Las Vegas for the national AAU championship. I beat him in the final, yeah.
You mentioned that you didn't really start fighting till you were 21 years old, and you had a pretty short amateur career, didn't you? Around 35 fights or so?
Yeah, 35 fights. Yeah, I was 32-3 as an amateur. All of them in the Army. So, but I won the national championship. So I wasn't really thinking about being. I didn't start with the idea that I was going to turn pro. But once I won the national championship in Las Vegas, I had a lot of people come up to me and talk to me about turning pro and wanted to manage me. And that's when I started thinking maybe I had a shot at a professional career, maybe doing something special. So I got out of the Army. Yeah,
I find it pretty amazing that you had such a short amateur career, and the reason why is because you were a complete fighter. You were very polished. I mean, you fought like someone who started fighting at 12 years old or something like that. You could hit with both hands. You were really very well schooled. You didn't throw roundhouse punches. You were very short and compact. Really, like what's the right term, Mike? That when someone is technically sound. I guess you were very technically sound. That's it. So what did you do that to? Was it Cruz your trainer who you give credit to for that?
Well, it was Noe Cruz, and then my manager became Jackie McCoy, who was also a former fighter, number 8 in the world as a bantamweight, and so they worked together with me. And when I was as an amateur in the Army, I learned the Olympic style of boxing. I had no punching power. I just threw a lot of punches, and I didn't stop anybody in the amateurs. I had 33 wins. I threw a lot of punches. I threw punches from bell to bell. So when I got out of the Army and Noe saw what had happened to me as an amateur, he told me, you're going to get killed fighting as a pro like that. So I was straight up and down, just threw punches. And so we spent hours in the gym settling down and, learning to turn my punches, sit down on my punches, defense. And I just spent hours with him in the gym, working on technique and defense, and everything else that goes with boxing.
Okay, one of the most impressive things that I found on you, which, I heard 1979 Howard Cosell talk about how you were did you start going to college at the same time you turned pro when you got out of the military?
Yes, I did. That was my goal. I wanted to. I had my first pro fight in September 1972, and I attended my first class. I think the following week after my first fight at Orange Coast College, junior college, and from there I transferred to Long Beach. Yeah, I started at the same time.
What about hold on, you caught me unawares here. Forgive me. So that's around the time you decided to go pro, and did you feel you were ready? Was it purely you thought you could make a few bucks? You thought you could maybe go far? What led to your decision?
No. Well, I first of all I went to Noe Cruz and told him I needed to. I told him I wanted to turn pro and I wanted him to train me, but he told me he had never trained a professional fighter before, and he really didn't understand or know what to do about a pro, So I said, so what do we do, So he said, well, the top manager right now on the West Coast is a guy named Jackie McCoy. So we got a hold of Jackie and we had lunch with him, and we said, we'd like you to manage with me. And he said, well, what's your story? I said, I'm a national AAU champion. I'm all Army champion. I'm all service champion. He said, that's amateurs. I don't care about that. He goes. So at that time, he was managing lightweight champion of the world, Armando Ramos. And Armando Ramos was getting ready to defend his title in the Coliseum in L.A. And so he told me, come to camp. I want to watch you spar Armando, and then I'll make a decision. So I went to camp. I spent 2-3 weeks sparring with Armando Ramos as he's getting ready to defend his title, and impressed Jackie enough that he wanted to sign me, and we signed a contract, and he managed my career.
All right. Your professional debut took place at the old Olympic Auditorium, which was like the West Coast version of Madison Square Garden on the East Coast. I think they had Thursday night fights at the time. Talk a little bit about what you remember about your pro debut and what it was like on fight night at the Olympic Auditorium.
Fight night was amazing because it was, it was very knowledgeable fight fans, and mostly Mexican fight fans, Mexican American and Mexicans on the other side, who got really rowdy when decisions didn't go the way they thought they should go, And I was, and that night, my first pro fight that night, I was what they call the crowd chaser. I was the last fight of the night, and I remember coming out of the dressing room and walking the aisle, and towards the ring, and people leaving, people leaving the arena, and I get in the ring, and I was supposed to fight a 6-round fight, and the referee came over and he goes, "Hey, it's late. We're gonna make this a 4-rounder." He goes, "Knock this guy out. Let's get out of here." So, and I remember just looking at being in the ring, and it was a handful of people left. Everybody left, was leaving. The main event was over, and so it was a quick fight. It was a 4-rounder. I won a decision, and I was still learning. I was still making the kind of mistakes you make as an amateur. You're still straight up and down. But I just threw so many punches that I ended up winning a decision. And it was still, like I said, working with my trainer on settling down and learning to turn on my punches and learning technique and. So yeah, it was a crazy night. My father and my uncles and my brothers, I think, were the only ones left in the arena when I got done with that 4-rounder.
Well, your career is moving along. You got up to a decent start, but then you suffered your first loss to Andy Price in a very close decision. What did you learn from that loss, and what changes did you make after that fight to help you get to the next level?
Well, yes, I think that fight was a very important fight in my career because it made me take a step back and look at what I was doing and realize that I had to make some changes. And one of those was that I was training at a gym in Westminster that we had opened so that I could have a gym to train in, and we had a few amateurs that were They were in the gym, hardly any pros except for myself. So I was sparring with young amateurs, so I really couldn't let go. I couldn't explode. I couldn't really work hard on these kids. I think the oldest one was about 18 years old. At the time, I was 23, right out of the Army. And so Jackie McCoy said, you have to change gyms. You have to go find a gym where you can get better sparring so you can figure out, where we're going to go. So I ended up going to a gym in South Central LA. They used to call it the Cradle of Champions because there was mostly champions training at that gym. In fact, that's where Mondo Ramos trained, lightweight champion of the world. Also, Gabriel Gonzalez was also lightweight champion of the world. Irish Frankie Crawford. Ken Norton trained there. So I started going there, and just, every day in the gym was a war, in the sparring sessions because everybody wanted to get the best of you. And that just changed my career and it basically changed my life because it took me to the next level. Otherwise, I would have got killed in that gym.
Let's see. You went to London in 1976 to fight John Stracey for the welterweight title. Between the Andy Price fight and the title fight, what was the big fight that put you over the hump to get you the shot at the title?
Well, actually, there was two fights. Zobek Barajas was a guy from Mexicali that I fought, who had fought Billy Backus for the welterweight title, and lost a very close decision. And then I think he was like number 7 or number 8, and they got me. My manager got me the fight. He said, this is where you have to go if you're gonna do anything. If you're gonna be in position to win a world title, you have to beat guys like this. So we took the fight. It was just a knockdown, drag out, 10-round war, and it was a draw. Because I fought the wrong fight. He made a lot of comments prior to the fight. He was trash talking, which you didn't see anybody do back in those days. They were in the mid '70s, and so he upset me, and I tried to fight. I actually fought his fight in the inside, trying to go. I went to war with him. I was trying to knock him out, and ended up fighting to a draw. And then we signed for a rematch, and in the rematch, I stopped him in the 9th round. And then after that, the fight with Hedgeman Lewis was the actual fight that put me over the top and got me the title fight. Hedgeman Lewis at the time had, over 40, 50 professional fights. I was coming in with about 18 fights under my belt in that fight against him, 19 fights, I think. And we fought to a draw, And so we signed to fight a rematch. And a couple of weeks before that, the rematch, he got an offer to fight John Stracey in London. So they called my promoter, Heidi Needham, who was a woman, and said we need to get Hedgeman Lewis released from his contract so he can fight John Stracey. And she said no. And and she called my manager and said, I got a plan. And he said, okay, what is it? Well, we're going to demand the only way we let him out of the contract is if Carlos is guaranteed a title fight against the winner. So that's what actually happened. She played hardball, and the promoter in London agreed that I would get a title fight against the winner. And I got paid $2,000, which at that time was a lot of money. and then Hedgeman Lewis went to London and got stopped. And so then I ended up getting the opportunity to go to London and fight John Stracey for the welterweight title.
So speaking of that fight, finally 76, you get your shot. What was it like to go into enemy territory, a foreign country, and take the title from their hometown guy? For me, it was. I never saw it that way. It was like I was so focused on the fight that to me it was just another ring. I remember walking out into the arena the night of the fight, and we were at Wembley Stadium. I don't know how many. I remember how many people were in there. Maybe 20,000, 30,000, and they were waving huge, British flags. They call it Union Jacks and screaming, just
and I was, it was just like a song all through the arena, and but I it was not, I didn't panic. It was just like I was so calm walking into the ring because I had done the work. I was very, very confident that I thought I could beat him from watching him fight Hedron Lewis. We devised a plan in the gym, and my trainer, Noe Cruz and Jackie McCoy, we implemented that plan, and that fight started, and it went exactly what we thought it was going to go. And the plan was to work the body, stay to the body, from round one, and work the head, and just go up and down, and keep switching the offense, making sure that he had different looks coming at him, so he didn't know what was coming next, and those body shots did him in.
Well, I just want to remind everybody, you're listening to Grueling Truth. We've got former WBC World Welterweight Champion Carlos Palomino on. Carlos, my next question is, one of the greatest fights I ever saw was your first battle with Armando Muniz. What are some of your recollections of that night? Like I said, it was an amazing fight. The other thing I remember about that fight is I think it was the first World Championship fight where both boxers were college graduates.
Yeah, that's correct. Didn't get a lot of play back then, but over the years, people have come to realize that that was an important time in history. 2 college graduates and fighting for a world title. And what I remember the most is that I knew Armando from way before. We were friends, and actually when I was an amateur in the Army, I got a couple of leaves where I came home and I go back to the gym where I learned and where I started, and Armando Muniz was training there, so I'd spar with him a few times, and he just beat the crap out of me every time I got in the ring with him. He was already a young pro. He was, I think, 10-11-0, and I was still in the Army as an amateur, and so I think that when we signed for that fight, he remembered that, and he was very confident he was going to beat me. I heard through the grapevine that he was saying it's going to be easy, but he forgot that that was a long time ago, and I improved, and he won, in that fight because I was fighting the wrong fight again. I was trying to fight him inside, and he was just a hard guy, a guy that stayed in your chest every second of every minute of every round. And he had the shorter arm, so he was quicker with his shots inside, and he was beating me. I think he won the first 7 rounds, and my manager told me in one of those rounds, I went back to the corner, and he said, you got to pick it up and start to make a move, otherwise you're going to lose. And that's when and he told me you got to start boxing this guy. Step around him, don't stay in front of him, and that's what I did. I just started boxing. I started using my range. I just never stayed in front of him for very long, and I started making my comeback. And by the 14th round, when I went back to the corner, he said the fight is even, and whoever wins the last round is the new champion. And so I went out and just decided, I wasn't going to lose my title, my first title defense, and ended up stopping him with, 15, 20 seconds left in the round, in the 15th.
Yeah, in fact, I just watched that footage today again just to refresh my memory, and that was a tremendous fight. You after that, later on, you went to Puerto Rico to defend your title against Wilfredo Benitez. Yeah. And you lost a very controversial decision, maybe a hometown job. What are your memories of that fight, and what do you think looking back? Do you think you won that fight?
Oh yeah, I've seen the fight over and over because in my mind that day, I knew I won the fight. I went back to the corner, and Jackie said, "Well, he said you won the fight, but I don't think we're going to get it here, because I thought I needed a knockout. I just felt like to make it, to be sure and positive that I was going to come out of there with a win, I needed a knockout, and it didn't happen. Will Benitez is just a great defensive fighter, but I just thought I made most of the initiation in the fight. I was the one coming forward, and I landed a lot of body punches and a lot of straight punches, and I just thought I won the fight. But you lose a split decision in his hometown, and anywhere else in the world, I would have got that fight.
Benitez reminds me of Mr. Mayweather. He fought in spurts, and he was hard to hit, and he hit you once or twice, and it looked really good, and then he would steal a lot of decisions. I thought it's funny you had the recollection, because I felt the same way watching that fight.
Yeah. He's a little different than Mayweather, but very close. Both of them are those kind of fighters, just great defensive fighters. I don't think Werfello ran as much. Werfello boxed more and tried to stay in range where he could land some punches himself. But I put a lot of pressure on him, and I thought I kept him on the ropes at times for a while and landing punches. But it just didn't happen. Then I was promised a rematch and never got it. So it was very frustrating.
Your final fight, at least for your first career, was at Madison Square Garden against the legendary Roberto Duran. It was a tough fight. You lost the decision. Looking back, is there anything you think you could have done differently to change the outcome of the fight?
Well, I'm not sure. I thought I was in the fight. I don't think it was one of the things that really surprised me about Duran is how quick he was, and his hands and his feet. Because I was never really comfortable as far as trying to landing combinations on him, because he was in and he was out and he using angles, and I was very surprised at his defensive skill too, because he wasn't easy to hit, and so. I don't know if I could have done anything differently. I was ready. I worked hard like I did for all my fights. I thought maybe if the fight had been a little longer, I might have had a chance, because in most of my 15 round title fights, I got stoppages late in fights, 13, 14, 15 rounds. So that was my MO. I got slow starts. So a 10-round fight, and I was coming off fighting 9 straight, 15-round fights into a 10-rounder. So I think I got a little bit of a slow start, and he just out-hustled me, just about every round, So and he knew how important that fight was for him. Because if you notice, after the fight, he dropped to his knees, giving thanks. So he was worried, and I felt very comfortable that I had a shot at beating him, but it didn't turn out that way.
All right. Let me remind everybody, the first half hour of our show is always live. There will be another 15 minutes. It will be podcast. You can listen to it at the top of the hour. On our football show Thursday, we'll have former Houston Oiler legend Robert Brazil, 7 straight Pro Bowls. Make sure you tune in at 11 o'clock Eastern Time. So we have a caller. You all right with taking a question from a caller?
Oh,
Carlos?
Sure. Yeah.
All right,
Mike,
caller, you there? State your name and where you're calling from.
Hi, this is Dave from Massachusetts. Nice to talk with you, Mike. Nice to talk with you, Joe, and it's an honor to speak with you, Carlos.
Well, thank you. Thank you for calling.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So I have a 2-part question. The first one is, was the matchup between you and Pepino Cuevas, given that you were you both held a piece of the welterweight title over an extended period of time, was that ever a possibility? And secondly, when given the time that you retired, you were still young, you were still part of the elite of a very talented welterweight class. Why did you make that decision, and do you have any regrets around it?
Okay, well, as far as Pepino Cuevas is concerned, there was an offer on the table when we were maybe, I think I had about 4 title defenses. He had maybe 4 or 5, and an offer for a 10-round fight came out of the Olympic Auditorium. They wanted us to fight a 10-round fight, and they were offering us $100,000. And my manager said, why? This is just wait and fight a world title fight. Both guys are champions. Why are you offering a 10-round fight? And then so then he went off and defended his title. I was doing the same thing. And actually my plan was after I had told my manager that after the Benitez fight I wanted to unify the title against Palomino Cuevas. Unfortunately I lost that split decision in Puerto Rico. Didn't get a rematch, and then he went on to fight Tommy Hearns, and we all know what happened there. So that never happened, and it was just because of the money that was offered and what was offered. Otherwise, it might have happened, later on. And as far as retiring I retired at the age of 30, and that was something that I had planned to do from the beginning. I promised my mother that my mother never saw me fight. She didn't like the sport. She didn't want me boxing, but she never said don't do it. I just knew that was her opinion, but she always supported whatever I did. But and I promised her that I would get out at the age of 30, no matter what where I was in my career, and as soon as number 30 came up, I retired, and I have no regrets at all of having retired at that age.
Well, Dave, you have any other questions?
No, great answer. A lot of guys get out of the game too late, and you still have a lot going for you when you have your faculties intact.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Yeah, you're right. And my father being a huge boxing fan, he always told me stories of great Mexican champions and great champions. They were just punch drunk on the street, homeless, and I always thought, well, if I'm going to do this, and that's not going to happen to me, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get a degree, and I'm going to get out in time that I can enjoy my life.
Well, obviously, you made a very wise decision because we're having this conversation today. So
That's right.
Definitely, you made the right decision.
Exactly.
I'm going to apologize to you for this next question, but it's inevitable. The Pacquiao-Mayweather fight.
Hey, hold on, Joe, real quick. We have to ask one question now.
Okay.
All right?
Go ahead.
A lot of boxers make comebacks, but most of them it's not 17 years after their original retirement.
That's right.
What made you come out of retirement? And actually, you were pretty successful because I think you beat Rene Arredondo, who used to be a world champion, and you actually went the distance with Wilfredo Rivera. First round knockout. I think it was on ESPN. I think I remember watching.
Yeah, that fight was on ESPN, right? Well, it's a long story, so I'll try to make it short. My father was diagnosed with cancer in 1994, and in 1995 he ended up in the hospital. The cancer had spread from his prostate to his intestines, and the doctors told him they couldn't do anything for him. So he told us, me and my older brother, he said, "Take me home. I don't want to die here." So we took him home, and I had a chance to sit with him and just reminisce about everything as far as my life, because he made my life pretty difficult when I was a kid and growing up. He was very abusive verbally and physically. And so, I was able to kind of clear the air with him and realize that he didn't know any better, and, he didn't have a father. Father left when he was 8 years old. And so, nobody's given a catalog on how to be a dad or a parent, So, I forgave him. I told him that I loved him, and I just had this really deep pain in my heart, So I went back to the Westminster Boxing Club and just walked in, and I felt my dad there. It's so strong because the time that I was champion was the best time in our lives, because he would come and watch me, work out and spar and hang out at the gym. So I just started hitting the bags, and working out. And Hector Camacho was sparring at the time. He's getting ready to fight, I think, I think he was getting ready to fight Roberto Duran, and Jesse Reed was his trainer at the time. So I asked Jesse if I could spar with Hector. So, my old trainer, Noy Cruz and Jackie McCoy, were still there at the gym, and they got in the corner and helped me, and I did 3 rounds, and they told me that if they had been scored, I won all 3 rounds. So I don't know if they were being biased or what, but but Hector said, hey, man, come back. That was good. They helped me. You're great. So we sparred, a few days, and I kept going back to the gym just because I just felt good. I felt really good in the gym. Then a guy came in with a contract, offered me $1 million for 4 fights. And so I sent the contract to my lawyer, and he said, hey, it's good, sign it if you want to do it. So I said, hey, I'm going to do it. I didn't make $1 million my whole career. So signed the contract, had 4 fights, 4 straight knockouts, and, I didn't get the money. The guy took off. But, I got enough of it. But and then the fight with Rafael Rivera was offered, and I had seen him fight Oscar De La Hoya, and, I told Bob Arum, who promoted that fight, I think I can beat this guy. So he took the fight, and, it was a close fight, but I lost the decision. But, before the fight was even over, I knew I wasn't going to, that was it. That was the end of it. It was like I felt healed. I was sitting in the stool on the 8th round, and I kept hearing a voice in my head saying, that's enough, So I think it was my father telling me, okay, that's it. So yeah, it was an extraordinary experience. Doing it at 47 and 48. It's like I made a whole bunch of new fans. I had people at the Olympic Auditorium, fathers with their kids, telling me, I watched you when I was a kid, and I brought my son to see you, and autograph pictures, and and it was just an amazing night, and I healed, and I don't regret it. I had a great time, and it was a special time for me.
Well, hopefully our listeners, for the few that may not remember you, I'm going to encourage everyone to go to YouTube, look up Carlos Palomino. He was a tremendous fighter, and you can make real arguments about how he would have done against today's guys, which brings me to my question. Pacquiao Mayweather, I know most people watched it. Did you watch it? And what did you think?
Oh, yeah, I watched it. Well, I actually gave Manny a chance of winning the fight when I did a couple of interviews before, and I thought he had a shot, because of his movement, his hand speed, and foot speed. But Mayweather did what he does. That's his thing. He makes you miss, he holds you, he hits you, and that's his fight. It's I don't know why so many people were so upset about. Well, I mean, I understand, the injury that what happened that we found out about after the fight, but I don't understand why people were upset about the fact that it wasn't a very exciting fight. Floyd Mayweather doesn't give exciting fights. That's his style. And throughout history, guys who fight like Mayweather have always been like that. People, when you talk to people and you talk about those kind of fighters, they always say, "Oh, they stake the joint out," because they're not exciting fights. But he's a tremendous fighter, boxer, who is very evasive, and he's a hard guy to fight. And guys like that will give a lot of guys trouble. I mean, the only fight that I've seen where I thought he lost was Jose Luis Castillo, and as a lightweight, and Castillo just put tremendous amount of pressure on him, and threw a lot of punches. And that's what you have to do with Mayweather. You have to pressure him. You have to be in condition to throw punches nonstop, and you have to be able to keep him on the ropes and make him fight your fight. Otherwise, you're lost. You're lost looking for him in the ring.
All right, that brings me to my next question. How do you think that yourself, Roberto Duran, Wilfred Benitez, how do you think they would have fared against Floyd Mayweather?
Well, I always tell people I don't think that Floyd in the 70s or 80s, would have made it to welterweight. He came. That's the difference between the fighters. This whole crop fighting right now as welterweights. Manny Pacquiao, Broner. All these guys have moved up from smaller weight divisions, so you don't have natural. Yeah, you don't have. I mean, Floyd was a featherweight when he was younger, before he went to 135, and so you don't have natural welterweights, bigger guys who are bigger bone, who take a better punch, who punch harder. You don't have those kind of guys. And when Manny and Floyd have fought bigger guys, they made them fight them at catch weights.
Yeah.
So I just don't believe that they would have made it to 147. I mean, and if I had to fight him, I would be a vicious body attack on my part. Keep him on the ropes and just. I mean, he has that perfect shoulder roll to get away from the right hand, but he doesn't have anything on the left side to block, to stop the left hook to the liver or to the head. And that's where I would go. And I would stay down there. I would hit him in the arms, I hit him in the shoulders, I hit him everywhere on the other side where he's not able to do that offensive maneuver that he does when he rolls the shoulder, and it's almost impossible to hit him with right hands. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Well, who are the fighters you like to watch that are fighting today?
Hello, pardon me?
I said, who are some of the guys that you like to watch today?
Oh, I love Montequianopoulos. In my opinion, Jose Montequianopoulos is one of the best welterweights in history. The guy was just an amazing fighter. I got to spar with him as a young amateur, learned a great lesson. And he was just, he was Montequilla. He was butter. He was that smooth. And I like Ruben Olivares. I love to watch Bobby Chacon back, when he was in his prime, and in the little Red Lopez, and then, as when I got out of the game in the 80s, I watched Duran, I watched Tommy Hearns, Marvin Hagler was one of my favorites, Sugar Ray Leonard. I watched all those guys. I'm a fight fan, so I like to watch good fights, and those guys were the cream of the crop come after that I watched after I retired.
How about today? Any fighters today you like?
Well, yeah. Well, I like Manny. I like Manny on all these fights on the way up. From the fights with Barrera, with all those guys coming up from 106 all the way up. I like watching. I like Oscar. I like this kid Garcia from Oxnard. So you must see who else. There's a couple other guys I can't think of their names right now, but I like Shane Mosley. I like watching Shane. So the top names that who are special kind of guys in the ring.
Well, Carlos, once again, it was an honor to have you on our show. We're running out of time. We got like a minute or two left. Really, this is a complete honor. Like I said, I grew up with my dad telling me stories of you when you fought amateurs. I grew up sitting on a couch right next to my dad watching the fights. And, my dad passed away a couple years ago, and the one thing I always remembered was him taking me to a Reds game or a Bengals game or sitting around watching the fights. And, it's truly been an honor to talk to you. Joe?
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for having me, man. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. So, Joe, you got any final words?
We have maybe a few seconds left. What are you up to today?
Oh, I actually, I'm glad you asked, because I just sold the rights to my life story, so we're in the process of doing a movie called Palomino.
Cool.
And so I'm involved, in the whole process. I'm gonna produce and possibly act in it too, because I've been acting for quite a while now. So I'm very excited about that project, and it just tells my story from back in growing up in Sonora all the way up to coming to the United States, and it has something to do with because my father suffered a lot, and he moved us to Tijuana so he could immigrate the family legally to the United States, and it took 3 years, and those 3 years were really rough on him and on us, and as a family, living in in poverty in Tijuana. And, you know, I was as a kid, I was out shining shoes in the streets so we could eat. So yeah, you know, so it's an uplifting story, and hopefully people will like it.
Hey, Champ, once again, anytime you want to come on the show, you're more than welcome. When the movie comes out, if you want to come on and plug it, we'd love to have you.
All right, I'd love to do that. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot.
All right, bye-bye.
All right. Hey, guys, remember,